Dragon Age, The World of Thedas, Volume 1, Chapter 2. Races. The history of Thedas is rife with conflict. Elves blame the humans for their mortality in Lost Empire. Humans fear Kinnunen in their relentless march for conquest. Dwarves have too much trouble with the Darkspawn to worry about drama on the surface, and limit contact by choice. The differences between the races of Thedas go far deeper than the point of elven ears or the squat stature of the dwarves. What's more, distinct, sometimes opposing cultures thrive within each race's ranks, only adding to political and religious friction. The only thing all people in Thedas seem to have in common is the continent they call home. Humans. Humans are the most powerful and common of all races in Thedas. But it wasn't always this way. While human history has a tendency to ignore or outright refute this, scholars believe there was a time when there wasn't a single human anywhere on the continent. The humans are said to have first appeared from the north as a single tribe known as the Narrowmenians. It's not known where they came from or why they came. The first human settlers were met with hostility from the ruling elves. At the time, the elves were said to be immortal, and what little remains of elven history blames contact with humans for the loss of this immortality. The elves began to age and die as the humans did, a process the elves called quickening. Fearing the effect, they distanced themselves from the humans, whom they called quicklings. By retreating from their own lands, the elves allowed the humans to expand well into the continent. Growing human tribes in the north united to form the Tevinter Imperium and became a significant power. The magic users of the Imperium made peace with the dwarves, but the elves remained their enemies. Eventually, the conflict between humans and elves came to a head. Tevinter laid waste to the Elven Empire, marching all the way to the capital, Arlathan. Arlathan's destruction elevated humans to a place of power in Thedas, one they have yet to relinquish. Human influence continued to spread through Thedas with the rise of the Imperium, and then, with the rise of Andraste and her cult of their maker. A fractured people. While humans are the dominant race in Thedas, they are also the most fractured. The race's tribal roots led to the evolution of distinct groups with their own languages, customs, and beliefs. These distinctions have been at the heart of numerous conflicts between human nations and religious movements. The ancient Tevinter religion, which revered a pantheon of dragons known as the Old Gods, clashed with the fledgling cult of their maker. When belief in the maker became the single largest religion in Thedas, conflicts then arose over interpretations of the maker's teachings. The Chantry, based in Ole, severed ties with the imperial Chantry in Tevinter over differing beliefs regarding magic and its place in the world. The ambitions of human nations have also made for unstable borders. Both Tevinter and Ole were at one time vast empires that threatened or outright conquered other human nations like Ville-Valter and the Free Marches. Scholars wrestle to explain humanity's ability to maintain power over most of Thedas, given all the infighting. Early human tribes. Tevinter Imperium. Narrowmenian. Believed to be the first humans in Thedas, the Narrowmenians fought early battles with the elves and were also the first humans to practice magic. They settled the entire coastline along the Nosen Sea. Eventually, 3 distinct tribes broke off to form separate kingdoms: Gelinas, Tevinter, and Barinda. The remaining Narrowmenians persisted under their own king until the formation of the Imperium, the first major human nation in Thedas. Gelinas. This eastern pre-Imperium kingdom, an offshoot of the Narrowmenians, was centered in the city now known as Gelinas. It was eventually united under the Tevinter Imperium. Tevinter. Another offshoot of the Narrowmenians, this early human tribe aligned itself with the dwarves and eventually absorbed the Narrowmenian and Gelinas tribes to form the Imperium. Barinda. Not much is known about this kingdom, which is said to have completely disappeared after losing favor with the old god Jumut. All that remains is a path and bare rock. Ville-Valter. Alamari. This ancient people occupied the land now known as Fairelden as members of various tribes, primarily the Clane, Jacint, and Avar. The legendary Gaulin had, backed by the Clane and some Avars and Jacint, united Fairelden and forced opposing tribe members into the new nation's fringes. Clane. A historically powerful Alimari tribe, the Clane joined Gaulin and had to help form the nation of Fairelden. Jacint. Some members of the Alimari tribe, called Jacint, resisted the unification of Fairelden, retreating to the Korkari wilds in the south. There they continued to live a peaceful if misunderstood life in small communities. Their leaders are shamans, respected in Jacint culture for their magical abilities. Avar. Like the Jacint, some others resisted the unification of tribes under Gaulin had. They were pushed into the Frostback Mountains, where they remain a stubbornly independent people with their own customs and religion. They are frequently referred to as Hillsmen or the Sky Cult. Ole Nevara. Syrian. Loosely defined and culturally rich, the Syrian people prospered in the fertile crescent of what is now central Ole. While other tribes faced pressure from Naromenians in the north, the Syrian were largely isolated, and remained a strong, distinct people until the founding of Ole after the First Blight. Syrian culture has all but disappeared. English. Originally the largest cohesive culture in the north of what is now Ole, the English had become decentralized to the point of wandering family tribes of no more than 10 members. Nomadic and isolationist, the English were on the losing end of a conflict with the Naromenians. The survivors were largely absorbed into the Syrian and Planocene. Planocene. The Planocene were a farming people with a surprisingly long written history and a strong culture of animist worship. Many Navarans trace their roots back to this tribe. Common curses. So, lad, you're getting your sight straight in your first day's topside, so here's some advice. You're not just trading with kin. You're selling to all kinds of folk now, with different customs and tongues. As I've learned here, the most important part of any language is the cursing. It gets you trust. It gets you coin. Most elves you see in the city are servants, and a human looking for a fight might call one knife ear. If the elf returns with shem or quick, blood's about to spill. Those Dalish elves use flat ear to insult the ones who live with humans like Karin and Light and Kimberlow, calling us stone blind up here. Even the humans who pray to some woman they burned alive and a god they call the Maker say something when they knock their shins. It's a curse to say, and Rastas. Well, anybody part, really. Maker's breath. Might get you in with a swaggering fool, but the lady priests won't be pleased. Chantry folk also don't like mages. If you hear a mage called a spellbind, hide anything flammable. Then there are all those beautiful words that just mean sod it. When that loose cobblestone flips and the ankle cracks, an elf will cry, Fenitus. While a human might, damn it. A Quinari will mumble, Vashedden. I've even heard a couple Tevinters yell, Kafar. If any of these get aimed at you, hopefully all that gets killed is a sail. Note from Hardle, a surface merchant dwarf, to an apprentice adjusting to life outside Oz Amar. Elves. The elves are a common race in Thedas, distinguished physically by their large eyes, willowy frames, and pointy ears. Their long history is colored by ages of human oppression. The once powerful elves are now second-class citizens. History. Today's elves are mere shadows of their ancestors. The proper name for elves is Elvhen, meaning the people. They once ruled a vast kingdom called Elvhen, translated as the place of the people. The lost city of Alathan was its capital. It is said that the elves were once immortal beings who lived by their own rules and beliefs. When humans arrived, the elves lost their immortality and blamed the humans for this quickening. The elves were eventually conquered by the Tevinter Imperium. Most were enslaved, and generations under the Imperium thumb all but killed Elven culture, language, and history. When Andraste and her cult of the Maker rose to prominence, they brought a successful war against the Imperium, forcing the Empire to pull back its borders. Led by the controversial Elven disciple Shartan, enslaved elves of Tevint rose up to aid Andraste's cause. For their service, the elves were freed and given the Dales, a land in southern Orlais, and a new capital called Sheryl. The exodus to their new homeland was called the Long Walk. Long Walk to Sheryl. Only 65 of our group made it to Sheryl. Some gave up. Some sickened, especially the little ones. Bandits stalked us. My mother forgive me, I had to steal food. A child fought me for extra scraps of bread. A few days later, I carried her for miles after her legs gave out. She died shivering in my arms. I used to have a master, a mage. He fed me well, never beat me, even taught me how to read so I could do his accounts, but if he had a theory or a spell he wanted to test out, he'd get out his daggers, have the other servants tie me to a post, and carve furrows into my skin. I was so afraid. Every time, I was sure I would die. But at worst I'd collapse, get bandaged up, and lie in bed too weak to move for days. The other slaves visited me in secret to survey the damage. I'd healed just enough before he needed blood again. That is why I travelled from Volume Dormer to the Dales with nothing but rags on my back. That is why there were 105 of us when we set out, all Elven. That is why I fell to my knees and wept when we crossed through the gates of my new home, a village for my people. Anonymous account of the Long Walk, as told to Brother Becker of Fair Eldon, circa 140 ancient. In the Dales, the elves attempted to rebuild their culture and once again worship their pantheon of lost gods. After generations under Tevinter, much of the old ways were gone, even some of their gods' names. The elves practiced what they could remember and adopted new beliefs to fill in the gaps. Relations with humans remained hostile, and the elven rejection of the Maker became cause for chantry. The elves founded a legion, known as the Emerald Knights, to protect their land from human intrusion. Tensions mounted, and when a small elven raiding party attacked the human village of Red Crossing, the chantry called and exalted much to crush the elven people and conquer the Dales in a series of brutal battles. The surviving elves, kicked from the Dales, split apart. Some became the wanderers known as the Dalish, travelling in groups and stubbornly clinging to barely remembered traditions. Other elves, bitterly resigned to their fate, now live among humankind as city elves, second-class citizens, servants, and labourers segregated to ghettos known as alienages. Alienages. An alienage is a section of a predominantly human community reserved for the elven population. In many cities, the alienage is walled off from the other quarters. This is to allow the city authorities to lock down the alienage, should a reason arise. Many alienages are plagued by poverty and crime. It is also common for infrastructure to fall into disrepair, as humans tend to let alienage residents fend for themselves, often without access to city services. While this segregation has allowed the elves a fair bit of social autonomy among their own people, it has also encouraged their isolation and substandard status. Suliden. Endure. Suliden is an elven song about enduring and emerging from sorrow, tied to the loss of their ancient lands, but commonly adapted to express personal struggles as well. For the purposes of this audiobook, the elven song will be read in the sequence of original text, phonetic pronunciation, a rough translation, and finally the song in its elven entirety. Melave einen Ensel. Ni lave non in arsal. Time was once a blessing. Ursua ravel to Elvarl. Ursua ravel to Elrl. But long journeys are made longer. Una em abelas. Una emma albelos. when alone within. In Olgasav Irmana. In Elgafasav Irman take spirit from the long ago. Into Sethenrand in Emen into Sethin air or and in but do not dwell in lands no longer yours. Lath Sulevin. Nalath Sulavin. Be certain in need. Lath Ravelina. Lawithera Hivelain and the path will emerge. Alventuv ir Mavir. Alalavi ehn ir Mavir. To a home tomorrow. Melana Nehin. Milana nei. And time will again. Enasal Etlin. Erimi Karsal Sahilefthi Karlin. Be the joy it once was. Melave einen Ensel, Ursur Ravel to Elvaruna and Rabelas. In Olgasav Irmana and to Sethenrand in Emen Lath Sulevin, Lath Ravelina Alventuv Irmav Melana, Nehin Enasal Etlin. The Dalish. The Dalish are a nomadic breed of elves who openly refuse to live under human rule. They see themselves as the keepers of ancient elven lore and dedicate themselves to gathering and preserving the remnants of their lost culture. Before the exalted much of the Dales, many Dalish were elven nobility. Though their status has long been stripped away, they maintain the same pride and sense of duty held by their ancestors. The Dalish live and travel in clans. Often unwelcome in human cities, they tend to stick to forests and other wilder places, never staying anywhere for too long. Their smaller bands, often made up of only blood relatives, are each led by a wise, senior member known as a keeper. The Dalish travel in ornately carved wagons known as a ravel, Brother TV wrote, drawn by large white stags called Hala. The landships, he observed, are adorned with broad hoods and bright silken cloths that flap in the wind, often displaying the noble banners that once flew over that family's house. The Hala are a domesticated animal unique to the Dalish, originating in Arlathan and bred to large numbers once more in the Dales. The stags served as mounts for the Emerald Knights when the Dales were still home to the Elves. All adult Dalish have tattoos on their faces. The intricate inkwork is called Valislin, or blood writing. The tradition serves not only to identify the Dalish, but to illustrate, in a permanent fashion, their commitment to the old ways. Most Dalish groups tend to keep to themselves. However, once every 10 years, clans will congregate in a single, remote location to take part in Huen, an event meaning the love of the people. Lore-keepers exchange stories and knowledge at this massive gathering. While the old ways of the Elves are celebrated, sad lessons of the destruction of both Arlathan and the Dales are also recounted and discussed. It is an important time for the clans, a show of unity for an otherwise isolated people. Ways of the Hunter. Though much of the teachings of elven religion were lost to generations of oppression and slavery, traditions do persist. The ways of the hunter, said to be passed down by Andruel, goddess of the hunt, instruct the elves on the proper means to respect and use nature's gifts. Embracing the ancestors' crafting skills, Dalish shape wood, bone, and leather into effective hunting weapons. Virasan, the way of the arrow. Be swift and silent, Andruel, taught. Strike true. Do not waver. And let not your prey suffer. Virbor Osan, the way of the bow. As the sapling bends, so must you. In yielding, find resilience. In plenty, find strength. Viradolan, the way of the wood. Receive the gifts of the hunt with mindfulness. Respect the sacrifice of my children. Know that your passing shall nourish them in turn. Elven phrases. What survives of the Elven language is largely kept alive by the Dalish. City elves may live and die speaking only the common tongue. Elven. Abelas. Translation. Sorrow. To be sorry. A ravel. An ornate, sailed wagon used by the Dalish, called a landship by humans. Also, a physical and spiritual path, a journey with purpose. Bungalen, the place of nothing, the Elven name for the blight, or, rather, where the blight comes from. Ellen Aris, eternity. Glyn, the dead. Dergunlan, children of the stone, the Elven name for the dwarves. Enasul, joy and triumph over loss, a variation of joyful relief. Herul, to trick or deceive. Herellen means trickster. Laugh, love of being. Also, to be in love. Nadas, inevitability, something that must be. Revis, freedom. Solus, pride, to stand tall. Sulanin, rejoice, joy. Sulidin, the concept of finding strength in enduring loss or pain. Athenera, immortal,